So I was talking with a friend and a question came up. What is the most dangerous single piece of computer code in the world? Yes, I probably need to find better friends, but still, I'm talking about a single, specific and small piece of computer code, the kind that a supervillain would want access to, and if they got to it and change it, they might break society, become a billionaire, or become the most powerful person in the world. I found 3 small pieces of code in very different environments and places, and if you mess with them, you'll send the world into complete chaos. And if you are a supervillain and wants to get extremely rich, number 3 is for you. But the first one is really interesting because it's most likely something you see every single day. The Google OAuth authentication, which basically means this screen right here, the screen that allows you to log into Google. You just enter your email, enter your password, and when you press enter, a very complex system of security checks and encryption and cryptography goes on in Google servers to make sure that you are actually logging in safely and your password is correct, and you get access to your Google account. And this piece of code is running in multiple Google servers around the world, but it's something that it's in Google codebase. And some Google engineers, high-level ones for sure, will have access to it and can change it. And all they need to do to send the world into a complete frenzy is add one single line of code. Because after all the checks and the security, in the end, what this form does is return one single thing. True or false? Is the login valid or not? And what you can do is simply add a line that says return true. And what this does is basically allows you to log into any single Google account worldwide with anything you type in the password box. Now, Google is a private company and they have billions of dollars, a huge infrastructure to make sure these things don't happen. But still, there are engineers at Google that could actually do this. Every single Gmail account, 1.8 billion Gmail accounts on the planet, will now become public. You could read your boss's email, your friend's emails, and not only you can expose all kinds of secretive and private information, your email is basically the centerpiece of all your digital life. And now suddenly you have access to all the online services of everybody that is using Gmail around the world. Now, this scenario is inspired by a video by Tom Scott that you can find right here. It's really interesting, but it's 10 years old. And in this video, he goes about and explains what would happen in this specific case. And the most likely response that the internet would have as soon as the news becomes public is that online services will start to lock password resets. And this should contain the damage of it. But that video by Tom Scott is 10 years old. And there's one thing that happened in the meantime, which is this button right here. Login with Google. This is using a protocol called OAuth or authentication, where you can basically use your Google accounts, but also your Twitter, Apple, Facebook accounts to log into different websites without the need to create explicitly a username and password in their database. So what this means is that there is no other password to change. Your Google account is the password. And of course, now that your Google account is compromised, all of these services are going to be compromised too. You won't be able to reset your password. So you can imagine access to all kinds of online services, from banking to social media to public websites that are running on these accounts are going to be completely exposed. Private information of billions of people and credit card numbers and accounts and names and personal information is still going to become public. Of course, Google will catch the error and it's very likely that they will fix it pretty quickly. But still, for those hours, the world would descend into complete chaos, and all because of one single line of code. But number 2 is particularly dangerous, not because it has an impact on your digital life, but also on the physical one, and putting actual people's lives at risk. I'm talking about the GPS control segment. And to understand that, we first have to understand how GPS works. Everyone knows what GPS is. It helps you get to a McDonald's when it's 2 a.m. and you're drunk and you're walking around a foreign city. And for your phone to know your location, it uses GPS satellites. Today's constellation of GPS satellites is called Navstar, and it uses 31 different satellites orbiting around the Earth. And each of these satellites is basically just a clock. Inside of each satellite is an atomic clock, and the signal that the satellite emits that your phone picks up is just an indication of the satellite's position in space and the time that the clock is recording. So once your phone gets a signal from 3 different satellites, it can triangulate your location and finally you're able to get to the McDonald's. And this whole system needs to be extremely precise. It even factors in relativity and the fact that time moves at different speeds up in orbit and here on Earth. GPS satellites have been up since the 1970s, but they need to be constantly kept in check. check, both for their trajectory and both for the synchronization of the clocks that are inside each satellite. Because even a small variation in the orbit of the satellite can result in massive location errors when you're trying to localize yourself. And the series of stations that controls the location and timing of these GPS satellites is called the GPS control segment. And the main station from which everything is controlled is here, the Schriever Air Force Base in Colorado. Now, whenever a satellite is sent a signal to redirect itself, maybe because its course has been changed, it's marked as unhealthy, which means that GPS devices here on Earth would know that they shouldn't use that specific satellite because it's correcting its orbit and it's not completely accurate. So what this means is that in this GPS control center, there's a piece of code, the piece of code that controls the signal that goes up to the satellite. And what this also means is that technically you could get access to this code and change it. And you could do one simple thing: change the trajectory of GPS satellites and not mark them as unhealthy. What this does is basically means that the GPS satellites would veer off course, but all the GPS devices that are on Earth would still pick up their signal, and their resulting location would be completely wrong for all receiving devices. Now, of course, the details of how the GPS control segment works is classified, and thank God, for good reason. But if you were a supervillain and got access to this piece of code and managed to do this change, the results would be pretty much catastrophic, because GPS is used not only by yourself trying to get to McDonald's, but by airplanes, by ships, by all kinds of road traffic. Everything related to transportation will grind to a halt. You can imagine what would happen with airline traffic. All airplanes throughout the world would have their location completely messed up. And of course, there are other systems that are not GPS based for them to track their location, but still, the consequences would be insanely dangerous. This is the Equinox data center just outside New York City, and it controls stock exchange transactions, including the New York Stock Exchange. And guess what they use to get the most precise time to timestamp all the stock market transactions? They use GPS. And this can result in a flash crash of stock markets, or even more serious and lasting damages for the world economy. So if you're watching this video up to this point, you're most likely a supervillain, and in this case, just please leave, or you're passionate about technology. And if that's the case, I've just launched something new, which is the Email Club. It's the first, at least that I know of, video newsletter, where each week I'll share an exclusive video just for members of the Email Club, where I share all kinds of news about technology and what's happening in the world of tech, and also behind the scenes and my journey of making stuff on the internet. It's completely free to join, and you can find the link in the description, which leads to my new beautiful website. So consider joining, but also consider that if you want to become a billionaire, you can do it by messing around with the third piece of dangerous code, which is Facebook's algorithm. Now, I know what you're thinking. Facebook's algorithm, you can mess around with it and change the perception of people and direct political views, but that's not what we are talking about here. Because I asked myself, what if I wanted to get rich? Like, really rich? Facebook is a private company, and there's one side of Facebook that deals with an insane amount of money every single day, their ads business. When you see an ad on Instagram or Facebook, that ad is managed by a different algorithm than all the main posts that you see. The advertising algorithm looks at everything about you and your profile and your likings, and it matches the ads that Facebook has on their system with you. So it basically decides, hey, I want to show Enrico this specific ad at this specific time and this specific place. Now, messing with the algorithm itself would be pretty difficult. The algorithm is based on machine learning, which means that you cannot tweak exactly the parameters of how the system behaves in a deterministic manner. But what you can do is do something really sneaky. You could get to pay some high-level engineers at Meta to add one single line of code inside this code base. In the bit of code where advertisers actually get charged for their money, you can add a line that says, for this specific ad account, multiply the factor that ends up in the payment processing system by 0.00001. And with this, you're basically paying $100 in Facebook ads for $1 million or $10 million or $100 million value of Facebook advertisements. And this now means that you have access to an ad account on Facebook that has an incredible leverage on that money spent. And now, with any creative way you find, you could make millions of dollars. You can sell ads from the black market for half the retail value and pocket the difference. You can build and launch your own product by having virtually zero online marketing costs and smashing the competition. building $1 billion company in the meantime, be acclaimed as a genius, and then retire off. And if you have other creative ideas, just leave them in the comments. It's gonna be just fun to see what people come up to. Now, of course, these are all very hypothetical scenarios, and for each one of these, there's vast and very strict security measures in place to make sure this doesn't happen. But it shows just how fragile the whole digital system is and how much we rely on single points of failure. If you're excited about technology and making stuff on the internet, you can consider subscribing to my channel. It's completely free and you don't even need to change YouTube codebase to do that. And if you're still not convinced, here's another video that you might enjoy.